Every human's desire is to be fully seen, fully loved, fully known. And if that's our desire, then we know that there's going to be some risk involved in that, because we have to figure out who fully sees me, who fully knows me, and who, in spite of fully seeing and fully knowing me, loves me as well. So how do we go from acquaintance to someone that barely knows anything about you to a friend, that 90-hour gap, for instance? Well, there's 3 types of conversation that need to happen. And I think conversation and questions are very closely tied to vulnerability, because there are ways that you can utilize questions to actually make yourself vulnerable to somebody else as an olive branch of, hey, like, I believe I can trust you. Let me give you an example, okay? Let's say that I want to pursue a career in finance, for instance, and I'm just kind of getting my foot in the door. I want to talk to somebody who knows a lot more about it to give me the ins and outs. But I don't want to necessarily use them. I genuinely want to build a relationship, a friendship with them. And so one of the best ways to do that is asking someone for advice. And you're like, oh my God, I'm not going to ask someone for advice. Nobody wants to help me. I want to go back to that stat that I shared from the Stanford study, that people are 1.5 times more likely to want to help, accept you as you are, accept a request, accept an invite. So why not go first and go on a limb and say, hey, what is some advice that you could give me on this? Or better yet, what makes someone successful at fill in the blank? I'm going to give you another example in a minute. But as we're talking about cultivating friendships, there's 3 types of conversation styles that need to happen in order for a friendship to grow. I found this very fascinating. It's research by Dan McAdams. It's otherwise known as the 3 levels of intimacy, but it's not romantic intimacy. It's just, hey, into me, you see, as in your heart. So we usually get stuck on level 1, which is general traits. Said another way, it's small talk. This is occupation, age, gender. What do you do? That's a small talk kind of conversation. But that's important to have some small talk, because our brain has to learn the basics before it can go deeper, because it's on high alert to signal to us if we're in danger or if we can't necessarily trust someone. So I would say that a lot of the times we get stuck in just level 1 is because we've been hurt before, we're afraid of getting hurt again. Yet that's important to note. And also, it's still worth bumping up against that signal that your brain might be trying to tell you, don't go any further, don't go any deeper, by slowly wading a little bit deeper in the water, per se. Which brings us to level 2, which is a necessary part of friendships. And it is as personal concerns or motivations and values. These types of conversations are basically things where you're finding out, like, what gets you up in the morning? What's exciting you recently? What are you working on that's like just setting your heart on fire? Maybe it's asking about family members. Those are personal concerns as well as motivations and values. And that's the next level that you can go to in conversation with someone. And that is a part where you're actually able to start sharing a little bit of vulnerability, because the more that you're learning about someone, the more you're able to relate, empathize, and share your experiences. And sometimes you might have to go first. Sometimes you might have to be like, hey, I am really pursuing this dream. And you share the dream with them. That's a sense of vulnerability. Vulnerability doesn't need to be like, my deepest, darkest secrets. Yes, that is vulnerability, but that's not all that vulnerability is limited to. Vulnerability is essentially just sharing your heart, sharing parts of you with somebody else. So level 1, small talk. Level 2, motivations and values. And then level 3, which is the deepest level of conversation, which can lead to vulnerability again, is what's called self-narrative and self-disclosure. These are the types of conversation that helps you understand and predict emotion really deeply. These are questions like, what is your deepest fear? What is your biggest passion? What drives you? Who is your role model or hero? And then following up on it. Those kind of conversations where you really start to get to know somebody's heart. And an example of a question that teetered between level 2 and level 3 when I started doing all of these meal dates, as I called them, with different people on my college campus, it all really changed when I started asking this question. Hey, I'm really struggling with something in life, and I honestly don't know how I'm going to get through it. So I'm sharing vulnerability first. I'm going first. So then I say on top of that, is there a time in your life where you had a moment where you didn't know that you were going to make it through, but then you did? And what did you do? What helped get you there? Now, this was a profound shift in the conversation, as I said, because now people know something about me. I shared my vulnerability, and they, in kind, have the opportunity to encourage me, step alongside, and actually follow up and continue walking with me through that, to be there, because we actually innately desire to be there for people. Why? Because we want people to be there for us.